What's up, guys? Rick here with a preview for this week's Legacy Classic. That's right, that's the Outlaw Tour. Actually, the Outlaw Tour and the Golden State Tour, I believe, are now, I don't know if it's co-sanctioned or running as one, but this is mini tour golf. This is where all eyes in the golf world are really at right now. DraftKings has, again, for the second week in a row, they've been running contests for a couple of weeks now, but prize pools have really begun to get really large every day in these events. So I can look past these contests no longer. This is a preview video. Now, I want to mention a few caveats before we get going here. This is mini tour golf. Some information is hard to find and or it doesn't exist. Anyone who tells you that they are an outlaw tour or a mini tour expert is probably yanking your chain, myself included. I just think there are a few things that I can point out that might help you in your decision-making process for lineups this week if you want to create golf lineups. Additionally, I had the opportunity to interview 3 players from the Korn Ferry Tour that are now playing mini tour golf in Arizona. I will link those interviews in the description below, and 2 of them that I chatted with are the 2 most expensive golfers on the slate here this week. So we've got the big boys to talk about. All right, we'll talk mini tour golf, the Legacy Classic, right now. All right, here's the cheat sheet on DFSOnDemand.com right now for the Legacy Classic. I understand that it says GCU Shootout there, or GCU Championship at the top. That's not correct. I just haven't updated it yet. This pricing is accurate to this week's Legacy Classic, and man, this feels good to be doing a preview video again, even if I'm wildly speculating a little bit. But this week, Legacy Classic being played at the Legacy Golf Resort in Phoenix, Arizona. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because this tour basically played here 2 weeks ago. It was Tuesday and Wednesday, April 21st, April 22nd. That was literally the event before last. Nico Galetti won that. He is not in the field this week, so we don't have that champion, but I am going to be referencing that event from just 2 weeks ago throughout this video. So where do we go here? KK Limbaugh Soot at the top at 10,700, Dylan Wu 10,400, Jeremy Paul 10,002, and Matt Picanso. I will also mispronounce a lot of names during this. Limbaugh Soot is correct, though. I'm positive about that one. Those are the 4 guys over $10,000. Now, generally speaking, most weeks, I'm not a huge fan of paying up for the most expensive golfer when you have PGA Tour golf. The margins between some of these guys are super razor thin on the PGA Tour. That's not necessarily the case in mini tour events. You get a much larger range of skill sets out there. You get guys that might be local to the area. Then you get guys that are coming down, like we're going to talk about, coming down from the Korn Ferry Tour, guys who have played a handful of events on the PGA Tour. Those are 2 completely different levels of golfers. So if we're ever going to pay up for some of the most expensive golfers on the slate, it is in these mini tour type contests. And keep in mind, the contests on DraftKings are only single day. We have not seen a rollout of multiple day events yet. Everything is a single round showdown, which of course increases the volatility even more. So keep that in mind as you're building some of these lineups. Leaving money on the table in a showdown type of situation is certainly not super detrimental, because quite honestly, there is a general lack of understanding or knowledge around these players, who they are, what they do well, what they don't do well, and most are just going to opt to go with the same familiar names and then also spend as close to $50,000 as possible. If you do any combination of getting guys that might not be talked up on videos, guys that, or even if they are, just spend $49,700, you become a much more unique very quickly. let's talk about the couple guys to the top because KK Limbaugh and Dylan Wu are two that I was able to grab and chat with for a bit last week. Again, these, or it wasn't even last week, it was 2 days ago or yesterday. I don't even know. Time doesn't even make sense anymore. Go listen to those. KK is a guy out of Cal. 5 years at Cal. He was a redshirt senior. He played on the Colin Morikawa teams. I believe he has conditional status on the Korn Ferry Tour. He had his best finish in Mexico before the Korn Ferry Tour went on hiatus. He was the winner of the GCU championship last week, and he did it in pretty spectacular fashion. He went out and shot a course record 61 in round number 1, which beat the previous course record by 2 shots. That usually doesn't happen. Course records usually drop by a shot and then maybe by another shot. To beat it by 2 full shots is pretty impressive stuff. KK does that, and it was no surprise. KK was 12-1 last week. I have not seen betting odds for this week, but I imagine he's probably going to be shorter than that. And he was knocking at the door. He was telling me his game was in great shape. He had like 3 top 5s in his previous 4 starts. He was feeling really good about himself and finally breaks through and wins last week at the GCU championship. So to get him back at the Legacy Golf Resort, where 2 weeks ago he finished in 3rd place at that event that Galletti won, it feels like KK is going to be able to continue the momentum, all systems firing. I really like him in this spot for sure. Now, Dylan Wu right behind KK at 10,400. I believe he still has the best official world golf ranking of anybody in this field. He was 304th, I believe, at last check. To me, Dylan Wu he's the best player in this field. So the fact that you're getting him at a $300 discount from KK is pretty interesting, but I'm not sure, and this is not a knock against Dylan Wu in any way. The comments that he made to me were much more big picture than this week, right? Dylan Wu is going to make sure that he peaks when the Korn Ferry Tour comes back. He had like 4 top 10 finishes or top 11 finishes in the first 6 starts of the year on the Korn Ferry Tour. He was playing awesome to begin 2020. I think he finished T12 in Mexico, which was the last event before the Korn Ferry Tour went on hiatus. I believe, and the vibe that I got from him in the discussion that we had was he's trying to peak for when the Korn Ferry Tour comes back, and he should. There is so much at stake. For if he gets into the top 10, could potentially get access to alternate events on the PGA Tour next year. I feel as if he feels there's much more to play for, and that he's treating these mini tour events as just staying sharp. Now, that does not mean that if you put him out there, he's not going to go for the win, right? He's not going to just foot down on the pedal and stomp these guys. I certainly think he would. I just believe that, there might be something he's working on. There might be, like, his main goal, his main focus is to peak for when the Korn Ferry Tour comes back. So that's my only hesitation with him. I still believe he is the probably the best player in the field for a $300 discount off of the top player. Just keep that in mind over the course of the next few days. In terms of cut numbers, so I believe there's 75 golfers in the field this week. It is a 3-round event, and I believe the cuts are always half the field. So it'll happen after the second round, which would be after Tuesday's round. There would be a cut down to presumably 35 and ties or 36 and ties, something like that. I'm pretty confident about that. And but for us, that really only matters for final round. I should not call it final round, for Wednesday showdown, where you obviously don't want to roster anybody who's missed the cut, but also remember that there is no finishing position points involved. DraftKings kind of says every slate is basically 3rd round showdown. Okay, so you're getting amped up points for birdies and eagles, but we're not counting finishing position in it either. So keep that in mind as the week goes on, because I'm not going to be making a preview video every single day. There's so much volatility. The guys that we like one day to another probably going to be similar. The Paul brothers. Let's talk about these guys. Jeremy Paul's 10,200. Yannick, I believe is how he pronounces it, is 92. These guys are twins from Germany. Pretty positive about that. They're definitely twins. They might be from somewhere else. But the general consensus is Jeremy is a little bit of a more refined player. He has posted better results over the course of the past couple of weeks. But it's Yannick, who is, $1,000 cheaper, that finished second 2 weeks ago at this event on the same golf course. Now, that was only a 2-day event. So Yannick went 66-66 in each of those 2 rounds. He would have to play a 3rd round this week. But if you're looking for $1,000 discount to one of the really, really good Paul brothers, I mean, there was a great, I think it was Monday qualifier. What's that guy's name on A Case of Golf 1? He's like the Monday qualifier guy on Twitter. Where basically the Paul brothers, they've each played 5 or 6 starts on the Outlaw Tour and have not shot around over par yet. They're both really, really well-refined players. Matt Picanso, I don't know all that much about. I tried to do a little bit of research. It seemed like he made 1 start on the Latin American Tour last year. He's played on the Mackenzie Tour to varying degrees of success. He's kind of in a spot where I'm not really sure I'd love to go spend $10,000 on him when I can drop down to a Colton Yates, or even better, I'm going to screw this up, Mark Anguiano, I believe is how he pronounces it, at $9,800. Anguiano is, you see his name on the top of leaderboards in mini tours almost constantly. I'm looking back at, let's see, this is last week. So last week he had 1 bad round, and if you have 1 bad round in these mini tours, you're cooked, right? I mean, it is something that all of these guys had mentioned. I spoke to Brent Grant yesterday as well. He's not in the field for this week, but he was like, these are shootouts. These are foot down on the pedal at all costs. 21 under par over 3 rounds, won last week. The winning score 2 weeks ago at this course was 12 under, I believe, 12 under in only 2 rounds. So you're probably looking 18 under par. That might be what you have to shoot over 3 days to win. And Anguiano really just had 1 poor round. He shot a 71 in round number 2 last week. You're going to lose a lot of ground on the field that way. Otherwise, 65, 67, that would be on pace. He's a guy whose name pops up quite a bit on these leaderboards, someone that I will probably target. I don't know if I can get him in as my second guy in here, because I probably want one of the top guys. I probably want KK or Dylan Wu in a lot of my lineups. If I don't get one of them in my lineups, I'll probably start at Anguiano. Or if I could get him in as my second man, I'd be thrilled. I'd have to make some concessions down at the bottom, but we'll kind of talk about some guys that might stick out there a little bit as well. David Gazzolo. I don't know how he pronounces it, $9,100. Kind of interesting. I don't know what he's done super recently, but he played 6 events on the Corn Ferry Tour last year. I think he only had 1 top 15, but what he didn't have wow, just stumbled all over that. He did not have enough rounds to qualify for stats, but he bombs the ball like 320 yards on average off the tee, and he makes a lot of birdies. Those 2 things in mini tour situations that's gold. A lot of these courses are not necessarily long. I don't know if I have the distance of, let me see if I can pull this up really quickly, for this week. Of course, I don't have it handy here, but generally speaking, these courses are not all that long. Okay, Legacy Golf Resort, 6,300 yards. That is 800 yards shorter than what they played last week at Grand Canyon University. When you get a guy who hits the ball 320 yards off the tee, they're all hitting wedges in. Right? Like, this turns into a wedge fest. If you can pile up a bunch of birdies, you're in a really good spot. So I don't know what he's been doing super recently, but interesting skill set around a place that's only 6,300 yards. Riley Wheeldon is another guy. So Riley Wheeldon's 8,700. Trying to think about this. So I don't know if he still is because, but I think it was prior to last week. Riley Wheeldon was leading the tour's money list, which is varying levels of, like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing if you lead the Outlaw Tour in prize money. But he pops up on the top of leaderboards a lot. Last week, he didn't play all that great, but he did make the cut. He went 69, 67, 70, finished at 7 under par. But 2 weeks ago, where we're going back to the Legacy Golf Resort, Wheeldon finished T11. He went 72, 66. That 66 number is important because that's essentially the pace you would have needed to be on to really contend here, like top 2 or 3. So he's able to go low enough here, very seasoned around the Outlaw Tour. There will be no surprises for him. I still think there's a lot of value at 8,700. 8,400 Sam Triplett. That is Kirk Triplett's son, I believe. Sam went to, Northwestern, I believe. I'm really digging deep for this knowledge off the top of my head right now because he was a teammate of Dylan Wu. I'm, again, like 95%. He was a teammate of, it wasn't Brent Grant and it wasn't KK, so it would have had to have been Dylan Wu at Northwestern. Triplett had, I believe, the round of the day in the final round last week. Let me see if I can pull this up here. It was tied with Brent Grant's 8 under, and Kevin Lucas went 8 under, and Triplett shot a, where are you at, Trip? Maybe it was in the second round. He shot a 63 in the second round, which was outside of KK's course record, one of the lowest rounds of the week. In fact, 63 would have tied the course record if KK didn't break it the day before. So the ability to go really, really low in a showdown format is awesome. Okay, so Triplett certainly has flashes of real brilliance out there at times. On the flip side of that, someone that is kind of intriguing in a different type of way is Daniel Hudson. Daniel Hudson's 8,100. Last week, he finished 14 under par. He went 67, 66, 66. So no super low rounds, but 3 really good rounds. So if we had like a week long, I feel like I'd like Daniel Hudson a little bit more. But if you go back to 2 weeks ago at the Legacy, that was the Legacy Shootout. This is the Legacy Classic. Wow, why can't I type right now? Daniel Hudson shot a 68 in round number 1, 76 in round number 2. So a little bit concerning to have that big of a difference between, difference in scores, right? To have an 8-shot difference to go 5 over par. If you go 5 over par in a mini tour event, you are dead in the water. Now, much better last week. So I'm kind of interested in getting back on that bandwagon. Now, let's talk a little bit of value because this is what you might have to do. Oh, also, by the way, this is Sam Saunders, right? Samuel Saunders at 7,200. That is the Sam Saunders, which I hate to do it because I openly mock this all the time when announcers do it. The grandson of Arnold Palmer, right? Like that's I'm like 90% sure that's him. Let me confirm. Okay, it is not. These are 2 completely different guys. That's why I will double check and do my homework here. Samuel Saunders is from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He is not Arnold Palmer's grandson. And he plays basically on the PGA Tour, Latin America, and the Mackenzie Tour, but he has not been on either one of those tours in a couple of years. So I will be disregarding Samuel Saunders, and we will act like that conversation never happened. Now, Nick Arman or Armin, it was pronounced differently than what I thought when there was a live stream of this on Periscope, but he's 7,400. He's someone that I had earmarked last week, and played really well for 2 of the 3 rounds. He went 65, 73, 66. Obviously, that second round is going to be a problem, but here's the thing. In showdown scoring, he would have been a really great selection in 2 of these 3 rounds, 65 and 66. He finished T22, 5 under par in the final round. He was 6 under in round number 1. That's all good stuff. Let's see if he played 2 weeks ago. I don't think he did. Doesn't look like he was in the field, but he's someone that I'm probably going to be investing back into this week. I do like that. And then Carson Roberts, he was probably the biggest disappointment. He did end up making the cut last week. He went 68, 68, 72, but I felt like he is much better than that. Did not play 2 weeks ago. Let me see if I can pull up his mini tour results here. Okay, yeah, this is why I liked him. He barnstormed the field 3 weeks ago. I guess it'll be 4 weeks ago. April 7th to the 9th, the Orange Tree Classic. Carson Roberts wins by 6 shots. He goes 63, 64, 66, wins by 6 over Nico Galletti, Nick Mason, Colton Yates, Riley Wheeldon. This is kind of before there was that real influx of Korn Ferry Tour players and Mackenzie Tour players and stuff like that came here to try to get to stay sharp. This is like, to me, and this is like the start of it. Like when Alex Chaco was in the field, this was like the absolute start of everyone kind of turning their attention to mini tour. At least some people starting to say, "Oh, this is still golf that's going on somewhere." And he just barnstorms everybody a couple of weeks ago. So the fact that he is now here, $7,000. The week prior to that win, he was T5. 2 weeks prior to that, he was T2. A couple weeks prior to that, he was T5. Like, if we were comparing this to, PGA Tour recent form coming in, we'd be like, he's like one of the hotter players over the last 2 months of the year. Like, that's what we'd be saying. And he's $7,000. Now, he hasn't played as well since then, but there's longer. I mean, it's still within the last 2 months, longer term form there. I think that's interesting. Now, I will tell you after that, there's a lot of these guys down here under $7,000 that I don't know. And I don't know anything about. And some of them have some experience out here. I mean, if you just sort by birdie or better, let's see what I can find out. Really small sample sizes on a lot of these guys. I'm trying to find the first, like Ryan Wallen. I've got 3 rounds on him, 35% birdie or better. I'm trying to find value, guys. Caleb Ramirez, I have 6 rounds on. He's 6,900. He's kind of up in the top 15 or so guys. So you'd assume that would level out as they play more rounds, but at least throwing it out there. I'm probably not going to play too many guys under this $7,000 range. I'll probably stop at Carson Roberts, or maybe if I'm doing a cascade, or I'm just trying to be different, maybe I'll swap out for Thomas Lehman is here. That's Tom Lehman's son. Maybe someone like that, but I don't know a lot about these guys underneath here, so I'll probably just stay away. That is my research for this week. I hope that helps you set lineups. The prize pools are pretty significant. Let me see if I can pull one up here. Yeah, I mean, the round one showdown is $25,000 to first $10 buy-in. That's significant stuff. Books have the betting odds available, so maybe I'll dabble there. But I hope you enjoy. Again, I'll link the description to my interviews with KK Limbaugh, Soot, Brent Grant, and Dylan Wu in the description if you want to hear those guys' thoughts on where their game is at and how these mini tours all work. You can check that out. Best of luck this week. It feels good to do another preview. I'll see you next time.